good morning. How's everybody doing? Come on, guys. That was terrible. You guys did? There you go. Thank you. I need a woo, a little Ric Flair woo this morning. We are week 4 of Intentional Parenting, guys. You are doing so good, and I hope that you've been blessed by this study that we've been doing. This is the first time we've ever done this, first time I've ever done this. So it's just good to journey with you guys and to know that we're on this path together and we're not alone. And you see other parents around you because we want to be better parents, and that's the goal of this class. And so we have 2 more weeks after this one. We'll end it next week with Sticky Faith, but then our last week will be on, like I said, Katie will come in here and she'll talk about healthy sexuality, and she'll also talk about technology. So that's going to be a big week. But this week, I believe, I think I say this every week, is one of the biggest weeks, right? I think every week we can learn something and take away. And I pray that, man, this class today, that you guys really take a lot of attention and really start thinking and processing, how can I put this into motion this week and the upcoming years with your child and your children. So I already told you guys, and you know this, that you are the greatest influence in your child's life. But my prayer is that you understand that you can't do it alone. That you need small group leaders here at the church that are intentionally pouring into your kids. You need people in your small group who are coming to your kids' football games, who are celebrating their birthdays, who are praying for them. You need grandparents to come around them. And, we need this team. That's what this whole week is about. It's called your Sticky Faith team, and building that team around you. So I want to hear a little bit of feedback from you guys, though, before we get started today. I want to hear some of your favorite parts of this class. Maybe some stories of how you've taken something that you've heard, maybe something little, and you said, hey, I put this in my parenting strategy this week. So is there any stories like that where you're like, man, I went home, I heard this, and I tried this out, and it failed miserably, right? Or it worked awesome. You can have any of those stories. Anybody have anything? Yeah, back there.
So we started doing asking, how to do some God at work today, and it's so funny with our 6-year-old, like the things he comes up with. Part of me is like, oh my gosh, really? Like one of them was, I couldn't remember my Star Wars, and I closed my eyes and prayed to God, and then I remembered. Like, just little things like that, but I'm like, hey, I don't care. If that's how you think God's working with you, excellent.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Yeah.
Done a couple things. Well, Nathan got into some trouble a couple weeks ago, and so him and I went for a long walk, and I brought up the phrase, Jesus is bigger than any mistake. He really liked that. That made him feel a lot better about that he was still in trouble, but that, I don't know, just kind of made him feel a lot better, and it opened up actually a big discussion about it too. But then, just what we talked about last week about telling them about what we're learning in church too. So I was telling him and Nicholas about the Side Pick series. And I was like, you guys are each other's best sidekicks and everything. And so they got a big kick out of that. And they were talking about, at supper, we've been having some talk about what they value in each other. We've been having to tell each other like, what they value about each other.
That's amazing.
They really think that's neat to tell each other.
Awesome. Yeah, Crystal.
I started talking to Hunter about how I got to be in actions were just a conversation between my boys and so my mother, while I was there, and that was just really neat to hear, of her being a little girl and kind of starting the chain of Christianity. It was just really something to hear, really special.
So because you shared your faith with Hunter, your mom was there and she was able to share her faith, like how her faith story started? That's amazing. That's awesome. Kristen.
Well, this is kind of something that we shared with, like, in the morning about the devotional. And instead of just having Kimberly do it, we all read that devotional. So at 8:30, we all do our devotional, and then we all come together, talk about a highlight that was in that devotional, and how we can apply it to what we do.
Great. That ritual that's starting, I love to hear that. Rituals are so important. Yeah.
I found a book out in the store out here for Marley, and very nice. It's Bible stories for radio or something like that. And every time we read one of the stories now, she goes to bed and then we talk about it. And like last night,
stories. It encourages me so much to hear that you guys are, listening, putting into action what you're hearing, and what you're getting out of it. Is there anybody else? I want to make sure I give the opportunity to everybody to share. I believe that you all are doing an amazing job. Whether you have learned something new or you are continuing with what you're doing, you guys are amazing parents for one reason, because you're teachable. That's what this is about. You're being teachable right now. You're willing to be here and you're saying, I don't have this figured out. I'm never going to have this figured out, but I want to continue being teachable. And so that's why I think you guys are one of the best parents, because you're here today. So we're going to go into this video for this week. And like I said, Kara's going to talk about a sticky faith team. Before we do this, though, I'm going to have you guys break off real quick. If your spouse is here, awesome. If it's not, you just do this first question by yourself. You'll flip it over in your notes page. Before the video number 1, I want you to name 5 adults that you would love to see invest in your child as they grow up. Maybe just think of 5 adults outside of you. What 5 adults would you say? And if you have multiple kids, maybe those 5 adults are different. So like if you have a boy and you have a girl, those 5 adults may be different, or they could be the same. But just, I want you to name 5 adults. Just talk with your spouse, write it down, 5 adults that you would love to invest in your child more. Those who would spiritually invest in your children, those adults who would give them good life direction that you would trust, adults that would relate to your kids. All right, don't pick someone that's not a kids person. All right, I mean that's just I've seen that before, but just think of those 5 adults. This is an amazing thing to think about, and because if we start thinking about it, we'll talk about this later. That's when this stuff gets real. So, 5 adults. You need a pen, there's pens right here. Alright. Looks like everyone's almost finished. I'm going to pray real quick, and then we're going to go into week 4 video. And then, like I said, take notes. Talk about what you guys grabbed out of the video, and then we'll hit on the last, no, we have 2 more, 4 more. Yeah, we'll hit on the next 2 of the intentional parenting steps. So let's pray, and we'll get into it. Heavenly Father, God, thank you so much for just another day, and Lord, for these parents, and that they're here, and Lord, that they're teachable, and I pray, God, that you would just open up our hearts, open up our eyes and our ears, allow us to see and hear what you have for us this morning. Pray, God, that you will help us become better followers of you, better husbands and wives, better parents, Lord. And God, so I just pray that you just teach us today. We love you. Thank you for us in your name. Amen. Let's check this out.
On my dad's side of the family, I am the oldest of 15 cousins. When I was growing up, 30 of my relatives would gather at my grandparents' house for holidays. That's far too many people to fit around one table. So as you can imagine, we set up 2 tables, the adults table and the kids table. My family is far from the only family to come up with this clever solution. I could almost feel you nodding your head as you think about the 2 tables at your own family gatherings. At my grandparents', the adults ate in the dining room. As you can see in this picture, we kids ate in the TV room. The adults sat at the fancy dining room table. We sat around card tables. The adults ate off nice china. We ate off paper, or if we were lucky, plastic plates. The adults actually had and used napkins, cloth napkins at that. We had our shirt sleeves. They had pleasant conversation. Somehow our conversation usually degenerated into throwing rolls at each other and a Jell-O snorting contest. In theory, we were at the same meal. In reality, we had two very different experiences. That sounds a lot like how adults and kids experience church today. The adults' table is in the nicer, bigger room, and the kids' table is down the hall. Most churches have adult pastors and youth pastors, adult worship services and student services, adult mission trips and student trips. Do 16-year-olds need time to be together and on their own? You bet. As one youth leader told me, the average 16-year-old doesn't want to talk about masturbation with grandma in the room. And neither does grandma, so that's a nice win-win. But one of my mantras is that balance is something we swing through on our way to the other extreme. And I'm afraid that's exactly what's happened here. In our effort to offer relevant and developmentally appropriate teaching, we have segregated kids, and I do not use that verb lightly, but we have segregated kids from the rest of the church. And that segregation is causing kids to shelve their faith. As we planned our college transition project, the team at the Fuller Youth Institute had hoped to find one thing that parents and church leaders could do that would be the silver bullet of sticky faith. We had hoped to find one element of kids' church involvement, whether it be Bible study, small groups, mentoring, justice work, that would be significantly related to higher faith maturity, head and shoulders above the rest. We haven't found that silver bullet. Studying scripture, small groups, mentoring, retreats, justice work, and a host of other ministry activities are all really important. The reality is that kids' spiritual growth is far more complicated than just one silver bullet. The closest our research has come to that definitive silver bullet is this sticky finding. High school and college students who attend church-wide worship services and have intergenerational relationships tend to have more sticky faith. Yes, being involved in intergenerational worship and connections can help instill more lasting faith. It's not just sitting shoulder to shoulder in the same pew that makes a difference. The number one way that churches made kids feel welcomed and valued was when adults in the congregation showed an interest in them. More than any single program or event, kids were far more likely to feel like a significant part of their church when adults made the effort to get to know them. My friend and colleague Chap Clark says a lot of brilliant things, but I think perhaps his most brilliant insight in the last few years is that we need to reverse the ministry adult to kid ratio. What does he mean? Many children's and youth ministries say that they want to have a 1-to-5 ratio of adults to kids. By that, they mean they want one adult for every 5 kids in their Sunday school classes or small groups. Well, what if we reverse that? What if we said we want a 5-to-1 adult to kid ratio, meaning 5 adults are caring for each kid, including yours? We're not talking about 5 Sunday school teachers or 5 small group leaders. We're also not talking about 5 adults to whom you outsource the spiritual, emotional, social, and intellectual development of your kids. We're talking about 5 adults who you recruit to invest in your kids in little, medium, and big ways. This sort of sticky social web doesn't happen by accident. As with most aspects of parenting, we have to be intentional. Just as the spider meticulously creates its web, so we must devote significant time and energy to surrounding our children with intergenerational relationships. In session 2, you heard Marcy describe the power of intergenerational community in shaping her kids' identity. We wanted to give you a chance to hear more from another member of that same small group to give you a fuller picture for the way that both we and our kids benefit from intergenerational relationships.
Covenant Group became a priority because Covenant Group was a priority. There were probably many times, obviously during the last 30 years, where we had to make choices of covenant group meetings versus PTA meetings versus soccer meetings versus softball meetings, and we made that decision. And I don't know how to explain that other than we did. It became a priority. The initial group that started meeting was 6 couples. We discovered that as kids were getting into junior high and high school, that we were able to use the resources. I mentored several of the boys. A lot of the women were mentoring other young ladies of the Covenant kids. And we just started building the reliance on each other through the years. I don't think it was the original plan. And as the group saw the children go through grammar school, go to junior high, high school, believe it or not, we had issues of sticky faith back then, making sure that kids as they went to college, had something. And so the group evolved into just a family, a true support. The concept of someone telling you that I'm going to pray for you and pray for your kids, and knowing that they're going to do it is awesome. Awesome. In order to get involved in another kid's life, you have to invest in that life. And I think it's important that the child know that they're being invested in. So as the kids were growing up, we actually would exchange kids for a day, for a weekend, to get to know them better, to find out what their prayer requests were. The children had special dates, whether it be graduation from preschool or graduation from high school or graduation from college. We were there. We were part of it. Probably some of the greatest times we had is when the Covenant kids started getting married. It became a tradition of the fiance, whether it be a gal coming in or a boy coming in, is they had to meet the Covenant group. And you'd go put your arm around a guy and say, we need to sit down. We're heavily invested in this young lady and we need to talk. It just gave me the ability to know that my kids could go to someone else for information, and they could go to guys that I trusted. Even Jesus had trouble preaching in his own town, and a lot of times when you face issues with kids, they may be more open to another individual, another male, but here again, they're talking to another male that has been there with them when they graduated from preschool, and now they have an issue while they're in high school. The situation that my son had was, he was a senior at Biola University. His lifelong dream was to be a missionary, and he was dating a gal, Diana, and they were very close. And on a Sunday evening, they came by and informed us that she was pregnant. That was a very, very difficult time. I don't believe I handled it very well. I didn't know what to do. Part of the problem when you have kids and they are not behaving the way that you want is your first reaction is not so much the problem that they may be having, but how have they reflected your image to your friends. That's huge. And it took me all of 20 seconds talking with my wife, Pat, to realize that my friends were the Covenant group. I had support. It was a lot of different things going through my head. My son had, he hadn't even graduated yet. What was his life going to be like with this child? We were pretty sure they were going to get married, so that wasn't an issue. But I didn't know if I should recommend that they give the child up for adoption. I needed somebody to talk to. The covenant group came together. We put together the most beautiful wedding in 2 weeks. They have been married 16 years. He's still a missionary, and 3 beautiful kids, and they love the Lord. It was beautiful to see how much they did support Matt and I, because when I asked Matt about how he felt during that time, and he says it was family. My family came around me. It was the Covenant kids were my cousins.
Can you imagine what our country would be like if every single kid experienced just 50% of the kind of adult support we just heard about? Our nation would be radically different. Thanks to our Sticky Faith research, my husband Dave and I decided to start an intergenerational group ourselves. We invited 3 families to join. One that was in our life stage, one that's younger with a newborn, and one couple who is in their 60s and has mentored us since we were engaged. We meet together every few weeks. The first hour or 2 of our time is devoted to dinner together. The second half of our meeting is focused on whichever book, or more recently, half of a book, or maybe even just a chapter we read for that meeting. When possible, we choose books that revolve around topics that our kids can discuss with us for at least a few minutes before they peel off to another part of our house. The group would not be the same without the young family just starting to navigate parenthood. Our conversations would never be as deep without the senior adult couple wrestling with what it means to follow Jesus as they move toward retirement. We could have simply asked 3 families in our life stage to meet with us, but we would be the lesser for it. Maybe that sort of intergenerational small group isn't an option for your family. The good news is that even if you can't develop 5-to-1 from one cohesive small group, you can create a cluster of relationships that form your own 5-to-1 constellation. Those mentors are often able to speak into your kids' lives in a way that you cannot as their parent. A few years ago, I heard Tony Dungy, the Super Bowl winning coach of the Indianapolis Colts, talk about the impact he had seen other adults have on his son. Tony's high school son was playing football, so every day after school, his son had 3 hours of football practice. Tony knew the energy that both school and football sucked out of his son. So Tony urged his son to have more than sugared cereal for breakfast. The son refused, saying that cereal was all he needed. Tony tried to convince his son that he needed more fuel for football, but his son blew off his advice every time. One morning, Tony's son woke up early and stumbled into the kitchen. The son made himself a large breakfast of bacon and eggs. Tony was tickled that his son had finally heeded his advice. He couldn't resist mentioning to his son, "So, I see you're having a bigger breakfast today." And Tony was hoping to hear back from his son, "Yeah, Dad, I'm finally doing what you suggested." But instead, the son replied groggily, "Yeah, the coach at my school said I should." Here, this high school kid was living with one of the most respected NFL coaches in the nation. But since that coach happened to be his dad, he refused to heed his suggestions. It was the coach at the high school who finally got through. All of our kids need other mentors to affirm and guide them. Maybe you go out of your way to encourage your child's teacher or small group leader or Sunday school teacher. Perhaps you invite them over for dinner or dessert with your family. Or perhaps your families invite your neighbors to go on a walk or throw a football in your front yard. Or maybe you schedule regular video calls with adult friends and relatives around the country so your kids feel connected across the miles. Some parents, realizing that the adults they know, trust, and respect are too busy to meet regularly with their teenage children, seek less intense, sticky 5-to-1 relationships. One mom I know detests gardening, but her teenage daughter loves it. This mom wisely invited one of the women in her church to take her daughter shopping for flower bulbs. Then the two plant them together, and they do this a few times each year. For those of us involved with a local church, that church can be a hotbed of 5-to-1 relationships. But as with your own family, 5-to-1 won't happen at your church by accident. Your church will need to be intentional in its planning and programming. The good news is that as your church moves its programs toward 5-to-1, you don't have to start from scratch. Your children's ministry, your youth ministry, and your church are already hosting events that with a bit of planning and some broader invitations could easily become more intergenerational. Perhaps if your adult Sunday school class is going to serve food to those who are homeless, you could invite the middle school kids to join you. Or if you're a mom, you can encourage your daughter's friends and their moms to join you and your daughter at the upcoming Saturday women's tea. Or if you're a dad, you can invite your son's friends and their dads to join you and your son at the men's annual steak fry. Whatever that is. Does it literally mean men fry steaks? I've never understood that. I've never been to one. The bottom line is that if your church plans ahead, you can capitalize on momentum from existing events instead of starting from scratch. As you look at your church's calendar, consider ways to be a voice, either loud or more subtle, for change toward more intergenerational connections that build sticky faith. Many of the churches and families we know who are best at using 5-to-1 to move away from the adults and kids table dichotomy use service or justice work as a springboard. When you're painting a wall or feeding someone who's homeless, the barriers or awkwardness of age differences quickly fall away. One church decided to display a one-time powerful and sticky image of how kids can and should be involved through intergenerational worship. One Sunday during worship music, the regular worship team, comprised solely of adults, began singing and playing their instruments just like normal. Suddenly, a teenager came forward from the audience and tapped the shoulder of the guitarist standing at the center of the stage. By the way, you can tell I don't play guitar. The kid held out both his hands, and the adult musician handed his guitar to the kid. That adult then walked off the platform, and the kid started playing guitar. A few moments later, another kid came from the other side of the platform and tapped the adult drummer on his shoulder. I also don't play drums. The same thing happened. The adult drummer stood up, handed his drumsticks to the kids, and walked off the stage. The kid resumed drumming. Within a few minutes, kids had stepped up to the platform and taken the places of the bass player, keyboardist, and lead singer. What had been a 100% adult worship team became a 100% student worship team. Regardless of their age, all members of the congregation were swept up in a new spirit of enthusiastic worship. Then the senior pastor stood up to preach. After a few minutes, a voice from backstage yelled, "If you're serious about involving us, we have to go all the way." From backstage, a teenager appeared, walked up to the senior pastor, and tapped the senior pastor's shoulder. The senior pastor stopped preaching, took a seat, and the kid resumed the sermon. There's something so powerful and beautiful about that sticky imagery. We're so used to kids being segregated off in the youth room or in their Sunday school class. Then when we get glimpses of kids being involved in the full church, we know it's right. We know it contributes to sticky faith. About half the time I share the importance of intergenerational relationships and worship with parents, I get asked, should I make my kid go to church? Believe me, as much as I am an advocate for intergenerational worship, I'm not naive about how lots of teenagers feel about sitting through church. I felt that way a fair amount myself as a kid. This is a tough question, one I wish we could discuss over coffee so I could ask more questions about your kids and your family. But not knowing your specific family, let me say this. While your long-term goal is intergenerational connection, primarily in and with a church family, the first hurdle is to help your kid feel like they are part of something they are choosing and enjoy. Forced friendships do not work very well for adolescents. Depending on the issues your child is dealing with and why they don't want to go, perhaps you could consider the following. First, make sure your kids know that as important as church is to you as the parent, you respect their desire not to go. At the same time, let them know that being a part of God's family is an important part of your family's life. Second, find ways to connect your child to Christian friends in casual or organic settings. As these intentional relationships develop, your child will have a greater internal incentive to get involved. Usually, when kids don't want to go to church is because they don't feel like they have friends there. In the end, do your best to seek a compromise. Depending on their age and your family's circumstance, ask your child to attend with you once a month, especially if they are plugged into another church somewhere else. If they're attending a different church, you should probably offer to attend that church with them monthly also. Whether it's within the context of your church or not, what do you do to get started building 5-to-1 relationships for your kids? Do what one very wise friend of mine did. Ask your kids to name 5 adults they respect and want to be like. Now my friend knows just who to invite over for dinner on a free evening. And there's no need to keep what you're doing a secret from your son or daughter. We encourage you to let them in on your 5-to-1 goal and celebrate with you as your family develops its own sticky network. If talking about 5-to-1 itself feels a bit calculated or forced, you can instead regularly remind your kids of the friends, coaches, teachers, neighbors, and church leaders who care about them, who are on their team. Recently, I met a single mom who had a brilliant idea for helping her son visualize their family's sticky web. In the hallway between their bedrooms, this mom has hung a few large collage picture frames, each of which has several openings for pictures. As her son over the years has built a relationship with an adult, especially a man, she's taken a picture of her son with that adult. So there's that 3rd grade Sunday school teacher. Click, she takes a picture. There's that Boy Scout leader. Click, she takes a picture. There's that helpful neighbor. Click, she takes a picture. Then she places those pictures in her frames to remind both her and her son of the amazing adults already surrounding her family. She told me that she loves that there are empty slots still in the frames because they remind her and her son that there are still more 5-to-1 relationships to come. That mom is moving away from the kids' table and the adults' table. She's figuring out how to let her son know about all the fantastic adults who know and care about him. Cheers to that sticky faith mom, and cheers to you as you take baby steps or large leaps to surround your kids with adults who care about them and can point them to the God who cares about them even more.
All right, well, I don't know about you, that first part, with the kids' table and the adults' table. With my family, we need about 5 kids' tables times maybe, and then 5 adults' tables, all right? That's just, we just had our big family reunion this last week, and there's probably 150 people there. 101? Okay, 101, and there's a lot of people missing in our family, so anyway. It's a big sticky team right there if you can get some intentional people important to our kids. So yeah, let's just open this up a little bit. What are some things you guys heard out of this building a sticky faith team? Some things that you guys grabbed. Yeah, right there.
I think it's neat, the idea of having people on their different walks, different stages of life, reflecting their relationships into your child.
Yep.
So the older, the middle aged, the young, so they can get it from all angles, you know what I mean? This is what my experience and this is what I've walked through, so help them, that's like a resource for you.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, intergenerational. That's the one thing I've learned through this whole thing is how do I get people different walks of life important more, rather than just my immediate friends who we hang out with all the time. Who are those older people? Who are those younger people? It's even hard to say. I'm really younger. Anyway, yeah, that's good. Who else? There's other things. Yeah, so I was at dinner last night, putting this stuff into practice, right? It's me and Morgan, and Katie was doing a wedding last night, and so we were at dinner, and I said, Morgan, I want you to name 5 adults that you would love to just hang around with respect. And so we had this conversation at dinner, and she's like, why? I was like, I just want to know. She's like, and so we had that conversation. Well, this morning, she was helping me lay out all the notes pages, like, Dad, this is what it was for. You lied to me. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you said it was for nothing. This is for the class. So I was like, well, I just wanted to know the 5 people that you want to hang around with. But it was interesting hearing like who she thought of, you know, and sometimes they have a hard time processing, so you may be like, what about this person, or what about in this area of your life, what about school, is there somebody at school, and then her mind starts wandering a little bit. That was a really cool thing to do with Morgan last night. But now I need to follow through and tell her exactly why, and to kind of give her the reasonings behind the 5 and 1, just like the video said. And I didn't follow through on that part, but now I get to today, so have that conversation with her. What are some other things? Yeah.
I just think it, maybe trying to involve them in activities where, like I said, serving, homeless folks meals, or, doing project work for seniors, or just different things where they can see how they can be involved and still get with other adults and other people, kind of in a project way. I think it would be really kind of neat just to kind of get them outside their own, worried about their own little world and kind of think about the world outside.
Absolutely. It's easy for us adults too, when we do these types of mission projects or things in the community, to just do it with the people around us in our small group and not include our kids. But how amazing would it be a model for them to have them get on the front lines with you and go pick up trash in Quincy, or go help out at the soup kitchen at Horizons together. Yeah, that's huge. What else? Yeah.
I was just thinking about like Josh and I, like our own testimonies, and how both of us like grew up with Christian parents, like Christian family, but didn't always see that or they lived out every day, and how like both of us we had another adult that wasn't our parents who really like made that investment in us and mentored us, and I think that was huge. And for both of us, just thinking our stories, how like that person is in our testimony, like they are an integral part of why we maybe went away for a little while, but we came back and became that relationship. And I think that's what
Absolutely. It's so good. Sometimes I want to make sure we always remind ourselves. I always have to remind myself, I am the primary influence in my child's life. You guys are the primary influence. But we have to trust other adults with our kids. Like, we have to. We have to understand that it's okay for them to go talk about their faith with someone else that's a trusted adult, and not get upset with them that they're sharing that stage of life with another adult. That's just, we have to be okay with that. Sometimes it really does make a big difference in our own testimonies or your kids' testimonies. So, what's some other things? A couple more?
when he said, when the guy was giving a testimony, a little tidbit of the, what was it called, the group they did?
The Common Covenant group.
That when his child came and said that they were pregnant, she made a comment and said, when your child is misbehaving, the problem isn't because we feel like our image is tainted as a parent. And he said that he didn't respond in the best way, but yet his kids still felt love because he had that group surround him. It's like, if I mess up in a moment and Casey doesn't feel love by me, she might feel love by Laura.
Yeah.
And she doesn't wander as far. So just how important those groups are, even when we can sometimes parents and people are images bad, that they still have other people to take care of.
And then awesome to have other people to help you out. It's so much nicer when you have those other people around you that can make up for your mistakes. And we forget that Jesus is bigger than any mistakes, just like he may have forgotten that. Because it does happen in a moment. It's just weird for me. And anyway, what are other things?
I was interested in the last kind of thing she was talking about giving your child a choice of going to church when they're older and kind of compromising. Because I know when I grew up, I didn't have a choice as to whether I went to church or not. It was required. And I know that there probably is going to be a time where it's going to come where he's going to say, I don't want to go. And I like the fact of saying, hey, let's compromise on this. Let's talk through it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be a time too, probably, where they may find friends who are connected to another church, and let's just talk about that. That's okay. If your kids are getting connected with Jesus and some other friends, and it's not at this church, I'm a pastor, I should probably not say this, but that's okay. Okay? Because they're connecting with Jesus still. Obviously, we want to make sure it's a good church, and there are, several in this community, but that's okay. But also just talk through it and just say, hey, why don't you come this week with me? Maybe next week I'll just go with you and I want to see what you see. And so that's, there's every situation's different. That's what Kara talked about. Every family's different. Every child is different. But the big thing is connecting them with people, some friends. And whether that's at the church or whether that's people from the church that you're connecting outside of the church. And so if that's something you guys are struggling with, as your kids grow up, come talk to me. I would love to help you, give you some ideas, and let's just talk through next. That's huge. So, what are some other things? I thought the Tony Dungy thing was hilarious. Like the fact that he just didn't listen to this NFL coach, but listened to a high school coach. That's crazy. I thought this morning was pretty funny. We talked about an example in there how kids were coming and tapping the worship leader and all that. Well, I was talking to the lady out there in the lobby, and she said, "Hey, Corey, I just want to tell you this. Last week when I went to a church in Texas, I called the office here, and they recommended this church. I went to it, and they did this really special thing. Basically, throughout the service, someone was playing, and they tapped on the worship, and they started playing, and then another one tapped on, and then all of a sudden, it's all students leading worship. I'm like, okay, seriously." It was amazing, like the way God moves in that way, and this lady experienced that, and at this church in Texas this last week, and I think that's pretty special. I want to also tell you guys why I have the opportunity to just kind of speak vision and what direction we're going as a church. And maybe you've seen this with our Fuse ministry and our high school ministry. That's our heart, is that these kids feel a part of the church. That's why you see adults and students worshiping together. That's why you see a lot of students on stage with worship, because we believe in this concept. We believe in Fuse students serving in this church and knowing that they're a part of it. That's why Rob, our Fuse pastor, just did a big signing day, and he offered all these different things for these students to do, to get involved within the big church, whether that's in early childhood, whether that's in the auditorium, whether that's in worship, whether that's in here worship, whether that's tech ministry. We want to see our kids, these kids in this church, feel like they are a part of something as they grow up. And so that's something that we are already aligning to and trying to get better at. Or, their daughter, Olivia, she helped out at CKX this last week and heard some good things from Dennis, and just saying she felt connected. She felt like she was a part of something. That's what we want to see your guys' kids do as they grow up. I will say, I believe that what we do back here in elementary ministry and early childhood ministry is the most crucial for your kids on the weekend. They need to be back here with us. But there are opportunities like last night, the one concert that we had, to bring your child in there and worship next to them and have them see how moms and dads worship. It's amazing. But on the weekends, I believe that they need to get on their own knowledge and their own level of understanding in worship. So a lot of cool things. Is there anything else? One more thing. Yeah.
Just to piggyback on what you said, because Bailey's now gone to high school, so now she's in church, and we're section leaders, we've been in Marriage on the Rock for however many weeks, so we got a week off when we came to this one, so we're like running out of people.
Yeah.
She has volunteered the last couple of weeks to do communion, and she just takes the cards from us, and so I think that's built in from the church. I mean, she learned that wasn't like that thing where she was like, do I have to? And she wants to come to church, and I think that's a big kudos to you guys in your elementary ministry and for you, is that she's grown up with that. She knows that's, and she likes to do that. And I think that just widely contributed to you guys.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. There's one more thing. That's a challenge to ask your guys' kids. Name those 5 adults. We're going to talk about that here in small group just a little bit. All right. Now we're going to do intentional parenting real quick, which is, I think this is a big one this week. When I was reading this, I was like, oh my, we're running out of time. I got to go quick. All right. So action number 7 is delicate discipline. Woo-hoo. Here we go, guys. You guys ready, parents? Discipline, right? Intentional parents view discipline as guidance with love, all right? Discipline is a sign of love, no doubt about it. You can't fully love your child if you don't provide discipline. They go together. Love and discipline go together. Both are acts of genuine care and concern. Scripture says in Hebrews 6, for the Lord disciplines those he loves. If God doesn't discipline you as he does all of his children, it means that you are illegitimate and are not really his children at all. We, as parents, discipline because we want our children to grow up to be wise, competent, and thoughtful adults who make good decisions. Quick fix parents rely less on discipline and more on punishment. We do this because we want to change the behavior quickly, right? So we say, hey, your child does something, you're like, all right, that's it, your iPod, it's gone for the day. Or hey, TV's, like, that's me. Like, I was punched in the face this week as I'm going through this. I'm like, Katie, this is terrible. I have to teach this, and I'm the worst at it. Or you will do something immediately. I'm like, iPod's gone. She's like, Dad, did you do it? No, TV's gone. Now you're back talking to me. Like, that's punishment. That's not discipline. All right, so like I have to learn from this as well. Avoid shaming and yelling if possible. Take them away from others. All right. So like, say your daughter is doing something, or your son is doing something at dinner in a restaurant. The last thing you should do is yell at them in front of others. What we should do as parents is we should remove them, take them out of the room, outside, in the car, and then try. And this does a couple of things. It helps you relax a little bit, calm down a little bit as you're walking, and you're starting to come up in your mind with what you're supposed to say, and you're not shaming your daughter or your son in front of others. Okay? A lot of our parenting is picked up because of the way that we were parented. And you know, like sometimes I'll say, I'm never going to parent like my parents did. I'm going to be different. But the only way we're going to be different than our parents, maybe some of your parents are really good, but the only way we want to be different from our parents is if we get intentional about it and we start making steps to change and not do what they did. Okay? Studies reveal that angry discipline produces angry kids. That makes sense to me. Angry discipline produces angry kids. When kids see you lose control, they're going to eventually lose respect for you. When they see you lose control in the middle of a discipline or a punishment, they are eventually going to lose respect for you. And that's a hard one. Another scripture says in Ephesians 6, now a word to you parents, don't keep scolding and nagging your children, making them angry and resentful. Rather, bring them up with loving discipline. The Lord himself approves with suggestions and godly advice. We have to use caution as parents and make sure that we cool down before we discipline. Intentional parents know how each of their children typically push their buttons, right? You guys know, as you think about your child, you know how they push their buttons. You know those phrases they say, or the way they look at you, or the way they roll their eyes. And we have to plan and make pre-decisions on how we're going to handle that when they do that. I bet you guys can all think in your heads right now that one action that just drives you absolutely crazy. Think about it. Plan. How do I handle myself in those situations? Intentional Parenting book says that we must discipline by choice, which includes 1, a fair consequence, that is 2, clearly communicated ahead of time, and 3, connected to the offense. So discipline by choice is a fair consequence that is clearly communicated ahead of time and connected to the offense. Fair consequence is not too harsh. The goal is not to get revenge or to help your child it is to help your child understand the connection between their choice and the results. Clearly, communication ahead of time means don't surprise your child. Like if you say, if you choose to fill in the blank, then I want to be real clear that this is gonna result in that. So like if you choose to backtalk me, that means you're going to lose your iPod. You start clearly defining what these things are, these consequences are, and it has to be connected to the offense. All right, some of that's hard, but the example I believe they gave in the book says like, if you're going to ride your tricycle and run over a cat, that doesn't mean you're just going to lose your TV. You should take the tricycle away, right? So you should try to think those actions that your kids do, try to connect the discipline with what the action was. So if they're abusing their iPod or TV, then that's when you take their TV or your iPod away. Not when they just maybe attitude, like I did a lot. So, you guys know this. Parenting requires energy, but discipline is one of the most exhausting dimensions of being a parent. But discipline is possible. Very possible. And you're not going to be perfect at it. You're going to mess up. I know like this week, after I was reading this, I was trying to cool myself down a lot more because it was on the fresh kind of in front of my mind. And I'm not going to be perfect, you're not going to be perfect, but we can be better, and I can be better. So discipline's a hard one, and there's going to be a worksheet that you guys will take home. We'll pass out in your small group in just a little bit. And our last one is this. Action number 9, and I'm going to come back to 8 and 10 next week. Action number 9 is positive memories. Positive memories. Intentional parents pursue opportunities to become memory makers. They pursue opportunities to become memory makers. And we're going to make mistakes in this area too, but I believe this is a really crucial thing for us as parents. That we will create bad memories for our kids. That's just going to happen. But the question is, what if the positive outweighs the bad, the negative? That's our goal as memory makers and as positive memories. I want you to think about vacations. I want you to think about your child's first time they rode a bike. These are positive memories for me. Friends coming over to your house and hanging out with you, or day trips you took to water parks, or softball games. My daughter goes to my softball games. We make fun out of that. Those are things that I want my daughter to remember. The time with her dad. I want her to remember the time when we went to Tower last night. We had a good conversation. The time we came to church last night before the concert. We played soccer in the new clubhouse area. Those are positive memories that I want my daughter to remember. Memories are built on the foundation of who we are. Which story will your son or daughter tell? Will they tell about a mom who was a nag? Or will they talk about a mom who was playful? Will they talk about a dad who was present or not present? Or a dad who was present and very passionate about who he is and what he does? Will they talk about parents who act like roommates? Or will they talk about parents who are crazy about each other? What will they remember you guys as? Will they remember you as parents who yell a lot or who laugh often? My goal, my prayer is that my daughter knows and remembers, and her memories are of me laughing and having a good time and loving her deeply and loving my wife deeply. That's what I want my daughter to understand and remember. I want those positive memories to be in her mind. Research says that family vacations typically provide the strongest family memories. I can think about all of our vacations. We usually take one big vacation every year, whether that one year was Disney World, this last year was Pacific Northwest in Seattle, and we went to Branson and went to Wisconsin. And every year we say, Morgan, what's your favorite memory? And she says, Wisconsin, out of Disney World, and she goes to Wisconsin on this dirty lake that was just awful. And, okay, but that was her positive memory. Sometimes you need to take spontaneous adventures. You need to make up traditions. And those are things your kids are going to remember. My daughter knows Taco Tuesdays at Katie's parents' house. Every Tuesday we go there for Taco Tuesday. That's a memory that she has and she remembers. And then also, I don't have to tell you this, but you should always capture these memories with photos and videos. And then look through them constantly. That's what I do on my phone. I love iPhones just because you can go through all the scroll. I'm like, let's just go back like 6 months. Let's go back 2 years. Like, oh my gosh, Morgan, look at this. Look what you did. You remember this? And we just go through these. Oh, I do it constantly. And I pick out different moments in our life. And I'm just like, look at this. We had so much fun. And I would encourage you, that's a great way to do it too, to create positive memories. And the last thing is to write letters, cards, handwritten notes. I will tell you this as a staff member at this church. This is something we are doing a lot, is writing handwritten notes to people within the church or people in our ministry, and it's gold. Like I receive something, a handwritten note, and I just feel so valued. And the first week of school, I wrote Morgan a handwritten note in her lunchbox, and she just, she loves that. And then she's like, are you gonna write me another note? Are you gonna write me another note? She loves it. And so think about those things as your children continue to grow up. Write notes. Those are things they hang on to. I know Morgan collects all of our notes together, and she holds them and protects those. So we probably should get going soon, so I want to give you guys plenty of time to go through these questions together. There's just 2 of them. I want you to make sure you talk about them before you go. And then on your way out, Jamie and Julie will hand out your homework assignment that talks about the discipline and the positive memories. I hope that you guys are doing those things, because there's some really good things that I've been sending home with you guys, some good activities. But if you guys have questions, I'm going to be here afterwards to talk about discipline a little bit more. If you guys have some ideas on discipline, I would love to hear those. I wish we had more time to talk and have some discussion, but I want to make sure you guys spend quality time with each other going through this. So I'm going to pray one more time, and then like I said, you'll break out, go through those last 2 things, and be awesome. Okay? Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much. God, time just goes by so quickly, and but I'm thankful for this time, Lord, to just talk about the Sticky Faith team around our kids. And Lord, just pray for these intentional parenting steps, Lord, just discipline and make positive memories, Lord. I pray that we can just get some new ideas, that we can feel refreshed, and we can say, man, I can do that, or I can do this, and put that in action right away, Lord. Help us, Jesus, help us become better, so we can bring you glory through our parenting and through our relationships. God, I just pray for all these precious kids who are represented in this room. Lord, I pray just for the way that they are journeying through, whether they're young, whether they are middle, whether they're in high school. God, I pray that you would just help them get connected with friends and other leaders and adults, Lord, that know who love them. And, so God, I pray that you just work through this time. And we just thank you and love you. In your name, amen. All right, guys, take us to 10:03. You guys have about 10 minutes before service lets out. So take some time, all right? Next week we'll finish up with Sticky Faith. Here we go.